Okay, so now we've got our low end mix down, we are going to hop into the drums. So let's just play the group as a whole. So they're all sounding pretty clean already. It's just going to be a case of adjusting levels and getting the most out of each sound that we can. So let's go through and just start turning everything off. So we can just highlight everything, turn it off like so. So now it's just a low end. So let's hop on, see what these top loops doing. So they're all hat sort of top loops, there's no claps in them, so we will leave them till later, but we'll put this clap at the front. Just put them on 0 for reference. So let's see what we've got going on here. So 2 claps, 1 in mono. Looks like I've already done some processing on here, so let's go through that. What I'm going to do now as well, that we're sort of starting to incorporate things that will be placed in the stereo field, is I'm going to put it in mono. So the reason why I've done that is so I'm making sure the levels are correct before I'm adjusting the placement of each sound in the stereo field. So what I will do is mix in mono, and then once I've done a good bulk of it, I'll come out of mixing in mono by using my keyboard shortcut, sort out any of the stereo width, and then move on. So let's have a look what we've got going on. We've got this clap, and this clap, which is adding that sort of character and sort of top end crunch to it. So let's mix the one that is already in mono. So I've just got a bog standard EQ, mono. I've got a big gain on it because I imagine this is, this is an audio sample, so it came from my TRAS. So it's usually a bit quiet when I record it in. We're just using decapitator. So we've got the drive quite high and the tone brought down. This tone is really good on the decapitator, so you can adjust it from dark to bright. So if I bring that up, you can really hear that it's starting to add some highs and colour and depth in the high end. Bring it down to dark. It's dulled it down, but still has that original character of the sound. So I've placed it there, which sounds good to me. So what we're going to do is we're going to load up a fab filter and just see if there's any problematic areas. So you can see that from using this decapitator, it has added a lot of low end back into the clap, which we definitely do not want. So I'm going to make a cut, drag it to around about 100. And I'm just going to look for anything that sort of seems problematic. So maybe here. So we're going to highlight that. Yeah, doesn't sound great. So I'm going to make a little dip. And what we're going to do is going to change this to a brick wall, and we're just going to cut to the high ends just to where it starts to sound normal. So about there. So all of that's probably unnecessary in this clap, and I can boost the high end in my other clap, which is going to be pushed out in the stereo field, clashing too much on frequencies. It's just really important to always think about frequencies when you're mixing down, creating space, boosting to make certain parts louder, quieter, and just making sure everything's got its place in the mix without it clashing too heavily with all the sounds going on. So level wise, I'm looking for about -17 or so. So that would do me. Okay, so now we're moving on to our second clap. So it looks like I've added some Stereo Savage to add some width to it. Decapitator again, I imagine. Decapitator and this Devo Lock Crunch. I bring that all the way up, just distorting the hell out of it, but with it just driving in the mix very slightly. Just adding that sort of texture that I talked about earlier, that sort of top layer. So let's get him sat in the mix right, so he's a bit loud. And we got an EQ on there. We did have a fab filter, but we're going to put another one on it. So it looks like it's fine on the low end, but it looks like there is some harsh frequencies in there, so I'm just going to remove them. Like a little shelf. Sounds good. Check the level of the clap as a group. So about -15, so I'm going to bring that down about 1.5. Maybe a bit more. There, it's sounding nice. So we've got this running through So because I made this track on my old Ableton 10, some of the plugins have stopped working. That is fine because I've got new ones that I can use and I know the sound of. So let's load up this reverb, which is an IRL from Waves. It's very old rustic sort of sounding reverb. Get the sort of feel of it. Dialing that in. I'm doing this in solo mode so I can hear it, because if I do it in the mix, I would put it there, whereas before I had it slightly lower. Because you don't want too much reverb on it for this style that I'm going for. Cool, so that sounds good to me. So we're going to move into the top loops now, just get them sort of sat in the mix. So with these, all I'm doing is I'm going to add an EQ. And we're just going to clean up this mix. So we're going to give that sort of a boost. Probably could have used do that. Give it a bit of a dip there. We don't want too much going on there. We don't want the body, we only want this sort of high end. Sparkle to it, add some reverb. Sounds quite nice with a bit of reverb on it. Add a sidechain. And I'm going to want him quite quiet in the mix, so 24. Probably go a bit quieter actually. So this top loop sounds really nice. Just check what's going on. It's pretty clean, so I'm not actually going to bother doing anything with that. Just going to get the levels right, so about below 18, because I still want to make room for my other hats, which are my main hats, my sort of driving hats in the track. See what's going on with this one. So it looks like I've already done some EQing. Oops. Again, just bringing out So we're going to pay attention to the level of the top loop group. So 15 on that first hit. And all we're going to do, just to help glue it all together, is run it through a bit of FabFilter Satin. Bring it down just a tiny bit, just to gain stage it. And because sometimes some low end can be added back in from these saturation plugins, I'm just making a cut at 100, but we're all good anyway. Cool, so that's them done. Onto our hats. So we've got this 808, which is our main hat, I imagine. So in the mix, I'm actually going to bring this top loop group down. Going to add a bit more reverb to it. See what I'm doing with this plugin here. There we go, helping bring some presence into the mix. The frequencies sound quite clean. I'm not 100% sold that there isn't some resonances that I can remove, so I'm gonna open a fab filter. Yep, so there's a few peaks around there I can get rid of. Mainly that one, I think. There we go. And while we're at it, a low cut as well. So we've got this 909, which is an offbeat, so I'm going to bring him forward. I try and put my hats in order of when they come in, or most important to least important. So these two are probably quite important. I imagine I've got some more somewhere. Maybe this one, top hat. Yeah. And then sort of these other ones are more ghost notes or hats adding groove other than that offbeat hat. So let's add this 909 in, which I imagine. Yeah, so I'm using that mainly for body. I'm going to try and get a bit more out of it using Decapitator. If you use Decapitator on any of these sort of 909 sounds, it always has a really nice effect. Just make sure to EQ it. Add in some more mid-range, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some room for this top hat I've got coming in and these top loops and that 808. Because they're all sort of high frequencies, I'm just going to remove some of the highs from it. And we're going to bring it down to about 18 or so. Add in the top hat. Add a nice amount of reverb to that one. There, remove some of that body, which is unnecessary. Get the levels right. Now going to use my keyboard shortcut for command 1, which is now using this EQ. I don't need to constantly hear this low end, all I just need to focus on is the drums. Bring down these hats slightly. delay to that one. Not too much. So these samples sound nice to start with, so that's why I'm not bothering with any processing other than a low cut. See what this one is. So this looks like a kit. So it's got the gated one and the conga. So I'm just going to try and bring all the sounds in that group to life a little bit. I'm going to add a sidechain. On there. Cut 100. Knock some of the resonance of that conga away. A few nasty frequencies of that 808. There. Some nasty ones on those unnecessary highs. So let's just get a brick wall again, cut them out. Add a bit more presence to the group. Check levels. Peaks a bit loud at certain points there. So I'm going to bring this conga down using the volume in the sampler. And I'm going to do the same with this closed hat. I'm going to leave that open hat fairly loud. Just bring the whole group down a tad. There, better. So there's no MIDI clip for this one here, so let's see what's going on. So it's over here. So it's a new hi-hat. So we've got the decapitator. I'm actually going to bring some highs back into it. Just giving it some attack, so the transients of all the other hats are doing the work, and this one's just coming in to add a bit of flavour and energy. And I'm just going to whack his standard EQ on it. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to get a fab filter, because that looks very nasty. Whoops, make a cut. Maybe give it a bit more presence in the highs. Yeah, nice. Sounds nice with quite a bit of reverb as well. Has a bit more flow. I'm just going to push it off to the right. So down here where the meter is, you have a left and a right. So if I push that all the way to the right, you can see now that's the signal all to the right, all to the left. And if I put it bang in the center, see we're sort of pushing a bit on the left, so I can just drive it to the right slightly. And now I'm more central, more mono. Remember, I've got this stereo savage on it, so that's going to push it out. So it's pushing it out evenly in the stereo field instead of off to the left. What else we got? We have got the 16th hat, which comes in here at the end. So that's definitely going to need a sidechain. And I'm going to brighten it up using an SSL saturator. And not that it sounds like it needs it, but I'm going to whack a fab filter on it. And we're just going to remove some of that body. Not too much because it doesn't come in too often, so having a bit of body makes a nice change. Like when it comes in, and because it's not in the track that much besides there, it doesn't get annoying. That is all the drums mixed out. Easy as that. So now we're going to do some bus processing. So for drum bus processing, what I like to do is a similar process to what I did on the low end, but we are going to go and just grab fab filter. Then we're going to grab this Punchier EQ again, but we're using the mid-range one. Put that at the start of the chain. Then we're going to just grab all the plugins that I use in my chain, which is this SSL drum strip and the Sound Toys Effect Rack Decapitator and another EQ. And that is all I use on my drum bus. Again, simplicity is the key. You should be using good samples to start with, so it makes your life easier when it comes down to this mixdown stage. So just like I did with the low end, I'm using this fab filter as a reference. So let's just go down to all the plugins, turn them off. So when that clap comes in, we're hitting at -15 or -15.6. So that is our reference. So let's turn on our fab filter Punchier EQ. Like I said, we're watching, seeing what frequencies we can boost. So what we got the choice from 200, could get a little bit of boost around the 300 range. Probably 500 is going to benefit it more. Anywhere that needs a dip, probably not. And yeah, let's add a bit to this sort of 3K. Yeah, to that 3K range could add a bit. So let's just leave it as it is, start driving. I'm going to drive quite hard on that 500 and a bit more subtle there. So now we need to bring it down a 1 because gain stage as we go along, or 1.2. There we go. So we're just going to use this EQ before we start adding any color from the effects rack and SSL to check out for any nasty frequencies. So a good thing to think about when you're doing these headphone filter sweeps is imagine you are DJing and you're using the DJM filter and you're just going down and down and down and down. The whole sweep should sound quite clean and nothing should sound harsh or horrible. So that's always a good thing just to think about is, imagine I was doing this on a DJ filter. Is this how it would sound when I'm doing it on a DJ filter? If yes, then you've probably done a good job. So that fab filter is not actually doing anything, so we can delete that. Next up, we have this drum strip. So this drum strip is very, very good, and it has some great presets in it. What it will effectively do is boost certain low frequencies if you desire. High frequencies, it will have a compressor in it, transient shaper, and a gate. Now, setting it all up yourself can be very time consuming, and to be brutally honest, I wouldn't have a clue where to start. But you can always find a preset, start from there, and then add some tweaks. Luckily, the first preset is always an absolute slapper. So it will see a big volume increase. So what I can do here is I can just check over what it's doing. So this is the amount, so like the dry wet, and then this is the frequency that it is enhancing. So we can then use our fab filter to double check. So it's boosting at 227. So yeah, it's probably not wrong, to be fair. 227. Drives all the way up. Amount is at 30. So I'm just going to start bringing that up a little bit, actually. You can hear that presence of the claps coming through a bit more now. So the highs, there is very little going on with the drive. So it's picked about 10k. So let's have a look. So then what I like to do is just sort of filter sweep the knob. And find the frequency that I like that it's boosting. So I actually like it a bit higher. And I'm just going to drive that a tiny bit more. Sorry, not drive. I'm going to increase the dry wet a tiny bit more. So the compressor, you can then just dial in and change. It's a very simple compressor, but I tend to have it quite low. So it was already on 17, I believe it sets at. I just sort of bring it down anywhere between 15 and 10. Because I don't like too much compression on my drums. I like to gel it together with saturation and EQing and just using good samples to start with. The transient shaper, you can then change how quick it works, the amount and the gain. For me, I like how it's sounding personally. So now it's just a case of mixing it back in. So at 10.2, so we need to go about -5 to get back to our original volume. Now we're going to add some color in with this decapitator. You could just use the settings in the drive. Personally though, there are some really good drum preset settings. So I use this drum fattener 1 all the time. And I just usually take the drive a tiny bit back. Check your levels. So we need to go about another -4. You can always right click on any of these fab filter knobs and it will give you the values. So now we can see it's added some low end back in. Now everything's sort of mixed, everything's gelled together a bit with this drum strip that we've been using. I feel like that conga's a bit loud, so I'm just going to do it with some EQ. Just knock it back like that. And I'm just going to make a slight little boost here. And a tiny bit of a high shelf. Check levels again. So we need to bring the master, which is this one here. If you start boosting from here, it's going to be whatever cue you're on. So make sure you boost from the master or subtract from the master when you're using the fab filter. So, can't see. There. So that's about right. So now what you can do is you can put all of these in a group. And in theory, when I click there, so we're 0.2 out, which is nothing. So on, off, So now you can hear exactly what each plugin has done. So we've added some color and boosted certain frequencies that were lacking with this Putec EQ. Then the drum strip has helped glue everything together using its compressor and the EQ features on it. We then have the effect rack, which is adding a bit of distortion and more color. And then we have just gone through with a fab filter, checking and removing any frequencies and some other boosts and cuts again. With it off, you can just hear how everything's just a bit separated. With it on, it's just helping glue it all together. What we can do now is we can take off our mono plugin. Now you can hear everything starts to have its own space. I personally think that conga's still a bit too loud. So we're going to bring that down. So I've brought them too quiet. I'm just going to bring it back up to taste in the mix. And like we did on our low end, we're just going to do some general checks. So on the bus, everything sounds good. The clap, we could maybe check the clap as a group with some EQ in. Maybe get a little bit more highs from the clap. Check levels again of the clap overall. So I'm going to bring it down a tiny bit. It sounds a bit loud now. There, sounds much better. I'm going to bring these top loops back in a little bit. Check over each one. We said we'd add some whip to, so that's what I'm going to do using this Waves plugin. So this PS22 is a stereo whip plugin. It's very good because you can select what frequencies you want to add some whip to and how much. So you can just add your cursor to here. And you can see if I want everything to be wide from 32 Hertz all the way up, I can do so. If I want this sort of narrow effect at the beginning and then width at the top, which is what I want, you can do that. Very good plugin, very easy to use. I highly recommend it. And there we go. So that is our drums and our bass all mixed. So to go, we have perks, synths, vocals, and textures still.